new report has found a lack of regional childcare services still has parents choiceless. The Parenthood report has revealed childhood education and care services are limited to non-existent in regional areas. It means children are missing out on educational, social and health benefits, and parents, of course, many of them can't re-enter the workforce or can't do the number of days they want to. The report has called for change to create better access. Joining me now, the Shadow Early Childhood Minister, Angie Bell. It feels like we could have pulled that story from last year, the year before, the year before. Why is nothing changing?
Well, Tom, I think things are changing, and it's important to note that the coalition government took the childcare subsidy from $6.5 billion to $11 billion throughout the time that we were in government. And now the Labor government has spent $4.7 billion extra in the next 4 years on the childcare subsidy and has not delivered one new regional or remote childcare place. So I think it's important to understand that.
So what was the difference? In what way did the coalition actually deliver more places? Because haven't you just both increased the same subsidy?
We also put in place the Connected Beginnings program and also the Childcare Community Fund, the Community Childcare Fund, the CCCF it's known as. And of course the Labor government has committed to $500 million over the next 4 years for that. So we have improved the situation. However, $4.7 billion is a big hit without any extra places in regional and remote Australia. And I've been travelling around remote and regional Australia, Victoria, in Tasmania, and I've been listening to families, and I've heard their stories about not being able to go back to work, and our children in the regions are missing out on early learning. And so it is important. What's
the consistent line on what's stopping people getting places? Because speaking to the people and knowing the issue is important, but also what about the centres? Is it workforce driven? Is that the main one?
Well, it's access in regional and remote Australia. In some places in South Australia and many places around the country, there is absolutely no access to early learning.
But is it centres getting the workforce? Is it finding people to do the job?
Well, there are no centres, Tom, in some of these regions. And so there's family daycare. There are other solutions in terms of South Australia, which has a regional care model, which is situated in kindergartens, and the state government actually pays for up to 3 staff in those locations. So there are some solutions out there. Some local councils in Victoria, Warrnambool, for example, are paying for centres. But when you say, is the problem staffing? Yes, in those locations it is staffing, because a new centre wouldn't actually make a difference because they're not running at capacity currently.
Right, and a new centre somewhere where there isn't one maybe isn't opening up again because of that staff issue.
Right.
So, I mean, we've got different amounts of Medicare rebate you get depending on whether you're regional or city. Is it time for something similar on childcare? Would that maybe change the ballgame?
Well, I'm looking at flexible options for parents, and it's important to note that parents in regional and remote Australia don't actually have a choice right now. So, of course, I've been travelling, listening to parents, listening to their concerns and really understanding the position that the sector's in. And I think it's a multi-pronged approach. There's no silver bullet to this. It's local council, it's family daycare, perhaps expansion of that, which of course is very useful in regional and remote areas. So there's no silver bullet to this. It's a tricky problem.
What about pay? Because Labor came in and gave aged care workers a government-backed pay increase. They once committed one to childcare I think that was the 2019 election, but that's no longer on the table. Is that needed? Would that be a game changer?
Well, of course, people that work in the sector, across the sector, are advocating for that, and that is currently
What's your view on it?
Well, it's currently before the Fair Work Commission, that bargaining process, so we'll see what happens out of that.
But of course, that's one process. The other option is for the government to just go, this is needed, this is dire, this is a productivity measure. Let's just guarantee something that'll shift the dial. What's your view on that, whether that should happen?
Well, it's before the Fair Work Commission right now. It's being bargained by the relevant union, and so let's see what the outcome of that is.
And then you'd assess whether maybe more assistance is needed?
Well, that's up to the government.
Yeah, no, but I mean your view on it. When the government has a decision and you're the opposition, you say, good call, bad call, do this.
Well, let's see where the government comes to on that, Tom.
Is there something more drastic needed? Because you increase subsidies, Labor does, you spoke about other programs and so on, but it just doesn't seem to significantly shift the dial. Something like a universal access, which has been put forward by various groups?
Well, look, I think it's important that Australians understand the problem with access to early learning in remote and regional Australia is simply pretty much about our geography versus our population. This is why it's such a difficult problem for our nation to come to terms with. In terms of universal access, we'll see what the ACCC comes up with in their recommendations, and we'll see what the government does with that.
There are areas, though, within cities and suburbs as well. It's not just regional rural. So it indicates something else is going on as well.
Well, that's right. It's about workforce and centres not being able to fill their ratios in their rooms because they don't have enough workforce. Therefore, we have long waiting lists in metropolitan areas as well.
So you've spoken about all the travel you've done around the country. Is it fair to say this is an area the Coalition's looking at strongly? You've come up with a pretty deep and broad policy and try to attract votes and change the system ahead of the next election?
Well, we want to see more regional remote families access early learning and we want to see good outcomes for early learning as well. And so we're working on how we can build in flexibility and choice for Australian families. And I think that's important. That is the cornerstone of what we're looking at, and that's the work that we're undertaking.
Yeah, for anyone that has been trying to find a spot, I'm sure they're desperate for some sort of change. Angie Bell, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.